In the first few seconds of how you show up, she already knows everything she needs to decide about you. Not your words, not your age, not even your intentions, but the energy you carry without realizing it. And here's the uncomfortable truth most older men never hear. Younger women don't reject age. They reject behavior that feels emotionally heavy, out of place, or silently draining. Because attraction is not just about presence, it's about emotional impact. And some habits don't just lower attraction, they quietly erase it. Welcome to Female Code Unlocked, where we decode the silent psychology of attraction, behavior, and emotional perception that most men never get taught. If you're watching this, you're not here by accident. And before we go deeper, subscribe, because once you start noticing these patterns, you will never see relationships the same way again. Now listen carefully. There are certain things older guys do that don't just feel off to younger women. They feel emotionally heavy, like walking into a room and sensing a shift in air pressure. No words are needed, just presence, just behavior, just subtle signals that speak louder than intention ever could. And the first thing she notices is when you try too hard to be seen as relevant. You might not even realize you're doing it. The forced slang, the over-explaining of things you think she doesn't understand, the way you try to fit in instead of standing naturally in your own energy. But from her perspective, it doesn't read as effort. It reads as insecurity disguised as adaptation. And psychology is brutal here, because confidence doesn't try to enter younger energy. It naturally holds its own space without needing approval from it. When you chase relevance, you lose presence. And presence is what actually creates attraction. Now, the second habit is even more silent and more destructive. It's when you become emotionally too available too quickly. You think you're being kind, open, mature. You respond instantly. You over-explain your feelings. You offer emotional access before she has even asked for it. But what she feels is not closeness. It's imbalance. Because attraction is built in tension, not instant emotional collapse. When everything is given too soon, nothing feels earned. And the mind stops valuing what it doesn't have to reach for. She may not say it, but she feels it instantly. Something is missing. Not in you, but in the dynamic. And then there is the third habit, the one that quietly kills mystery. Talking too much about your past to justify who you are now. You bring up old achievements, old struggles, old relationships, as if your history is supposed to build attraction. But instead, it creates emotional fatigue. Because younger women are not looking for a biography. They are looking for emotional experience in the present moment. And the moment you live too much in explanation, you stop living in presence. She starts to feel like she already knows you. And once a man becomes fully predictable in the mind, curiosity dies. And without curiosity, attraction starts to fade silently, even if nothing wrong was done. But here's where it gets deeper. Because these are not just habits, they are signals. Signals of how you see yourself when you are around someone younger, more vibrant, more emotionally unpredictable. And she reads those signals faster than you can adjust them. Not because she is judging you, but because human psychology is always scanning for emotional balance, leadership, and internal stability. And when that balance feels slightly off, she doesn't argue. She doesn't explain. She simply shifts away emotionally first, long before she ever leaves physically. And that's where most men get confused. They think it happened suddenly. But in reality, it started with the smallest invisible behaviors, and we're just getting started. Because the next habits go even deeper into the psychology of attraction and repulsion between older men and younger women. Because what comes next is where most older men unknowingly cross a line they don't even see. But she feels it instantly. The fourth habit is when you start seeking validation from her instead of leading the interaction. At first, it looks harmless. You ask her opinion on everything. You wait for her reactions before you decide how to act. You subtly look for approval in your tone, your jokes, your choices. But what she experiences is not connection. It is emotional reversal. The dynamic quietly flips. And when that happens, attraction doesn't grow. It dissolves into discomfort. Because deep down, younger women don't feel drawn to men who orbit around their validation. They feel drawn to men who have a center of gravity so strong that even silence feels stable. When you start asking, "Did I say the right thing?" without saying it, she stops seeing you as grounded. And the moment she stops feeling your internal direction, she starts feeling responsible for the emotional direction of the interaction. And that is where attraction begins to die quietly, not loudly, not dramatically, but in small emotional withdrawals she cannot even explain. Then comes the fifth habit, and this one is more subtle than words. It's when you overcompensate with generosity too early. You start offering too much too soon. Too many favors. Too many gifts. Too many emotional shortcuts. You think you are building appreciation, but psychologically, you are removing the natural process of desire. Because desire is not born from abundance given instantly. It is born from meaningful pacing. When something is too accessible, the mind stops assigning value to it. And when value drops, emotional investment follows. She may still smile, she may still respond. But internally, the emotional weight of your presence becomes lighter than it should be. And lighter presence means weaker attraction. Now, the sixth habit is where things get even more psychologically sharp. It's when you try to prove maturity by criticizing younger behavior. You might not notice it. The subtle lectures, the comparisons, the "when I was your age" energy, the quiet attempts to position yourself as wiser, more experienced, more evolved. But instead of creating admiration, it creates emotional distance. Because attraction doesn't respond to superiority. It responds to emotional resonance. And when you step into a role of constant correction, she doesn't feel guided. She feels managed. And the mind resists being managed in spaces where it seeks emotional freedom. So instead of drawing her closer, you push her into internal withdrawal. And now she is no longer fully present with you, even when she is physically there. And finally, the seventh habit is the most invisible of all. It's when your emotional tone carries subtle desperation for connection. Not obvious desperation, not needy texting, but something deeper. A tone that says, "I want to be chosen." It shows in how you react too quickly, how you stay a little too long in conversations that should have ended naturally, how you try to extend moments that should have ended with mystery. And she feels it. Not consciously, but instinctively. Because attraction thrives where there is emotional independence, and it weakens where there is emotional pursuit disguised as effort. At that point, she doesn't lose respect all at once. She slowly loses emotional intrigue. And once intrigue is gone, even the most attractive traits become background noise. But here's the part most people never understand. None of this is about age. It's about energy. It's about whether your presence feels grounded or quietly searching. And younger women don't walk away from men because they are older. They walk away from emotional patterns that feel unbalanced, uncertain, or internally conflicted. And the hardest truth? Most men don't even realize they are broadcasting these patterns until the distance is already created. And by then, it feels like she changed. But in reality, she just started feeling something she could no longer ignore. And we're going even deeper in part 3, where I'll show you the final psychological shifts that completely change how attraction forms between older men and younger women.